Welcome to this week's Sandpile. This week we have Denny Cave, and he's going to introduce and talk about SiteWild for the folks that are still trying to decide what to do with Business Catalyst. Go ahead, Denny.
All right, thanks, Dave. I appreciate you guys having me. To everybody that came in live and everybody watching on the replay, I am Denny, founder of SiteWild, and SiteWild is a website platform built by resellers for resellers. And I want to give you a look at what we're all about. As we go through this, please feel free to hop in on the chat, ask any questions along the way. We'll do some Q&A at the end. But I'm totally an open book, whether it's something specific to our platform or something even remotely related. I'm always happy to help, whether it's here or later on in a private chat. But I just want you to walk away today knowing that everything you need to know to decide if SiteWild is right for you or and right for your clients. And that's really what this is about. It's about your clients. Websites. SiteWild is not the end-all be-all solution, and I won't give you endless diatribe about how our platform is better than everybody else's, but just aim to inform about what we're doing and specifically how it's a little bit different and better, in my opinion, than what a lot of other hosted website platforms are doing. So here's just a quick overview of what we're going to go through. I want to tell you a little bit of the genesis of where we came from with SiteWild, how we got to where we are. I want to discuss some of the features that we see in an ideal hosted website platform, and then go through a few example sites, show you the demo, of course, and then go over some pricing and support before we take questions. This is maybe a little bit different than some of the other presentations you guys have done. I just want to set the stage for what we're doing because it's important to me that we share similar values with the partners that we collaborate with. And in a lot of ways, those values are almost more important than the product itself. We started out in WordPress back in 2004. I usually say 2003, but I don't want to take too much credit for being around since the very beginning. It was somewhere in that time period. We were doing lots of really hacky stuff with using posts as pages because we didn't have pages or menus or anything like that back then. But I was really concerned about security, backups, vulnerabilities, all these types of things that just kept me up at night. And running an agency, that was not the kind of life I wanted to live, where I was just worried all the time about a site going down or having problems. And there wasn't an ecosystem for any of that stuff. So just kind of moved along and floated through a lot of different CMSs for the next couple of years. Until we landed on Business Catalyst. That was, I think we found it through Goodberry at the time, maybe. But I loved it. It was great. My team, everybody on the team loved it. It was just really good for developers and for what we were doing. But our clients didn't really seem to click with it. They didn't love the back-end interface. Some of the front-end editing tools were not there yet. And we have a really large non-technical audience for a lot of the sites we were building at the time. So we ended up moving on, but I was really impressed with the community and the resources and things that were being developed around Business Catalyst, and it always kept in touch with things like the Sandpile and things that BC Guru was doing, and just those types of resources kind of always kept them in the rearview mirror and didn't lose them totally as we went ahead and moved on to LightCMS. LightCMS you may or may not be familiar with, but they were another hosted website platform that focused a little bit more on the user experience for front-end editing of the content. We ended up becoming a really kind of a premier provider in that space. We were doing templates, tutorials, developer support, building lots of things for resellers. It was close to what BC Gurus was for Business Catalyst. But unfortunately, LightCMS got acquired a couple of times, seemingly has been put out to pasture now. So we kind of made the decision to move back to WordPress. And we had been kind of using WordPress when the time called for it. If a client needed more advanced functionality, or they just for some reason couldn't fit into one of the boxes that the hosted website platforms put around them, we would build the site on WordPress. So we kept up on the technology. We're familiar with it. It was pretty natural for us to move back in. But then we started having, I won't say the same problems that we had in 2004, but similar types of concerns where it's just everything is disconnected and nothing's standardized, and you decide to use a new plugin one place, you got to go update it across 50 different sites. And we just thought, why can't we standardize what we're doing now the way it was with a hosted solution? So we started building something internally to take care of CDN, caching, SSL, hosting, of course, so we could set it all up once and reap the benefits. And we've been using that platform for a while now. Come 2018, that is what has now evolved into SiteWild. So we've ironically come full circle from being afraid of the hosting and security and the backups and all those things, and now moved into that's part of what we're providing as a part of this service. So the point is, I've been where you are, or have been too, in the trenches, dealing with client requests, finding ways to let them edit their sites, managing billing, making sure the sites stay up while everybody gets a little shut eye. I've been in those shoes, and I know what it's like to kind of put all of your cards in with a hosted website platform. So because of the experience across all the different CMSs we've used, we've kind of come up with it's almost a set of values for the company than it is a list of features, but things that we see that are ideal in a website platform. You have these things that I call the givens: CDN, SSL, the backend interface, all the different tools that you have available to you. To me, that's something that every website platform should have if you're hosting your sites there. But there's things beyond that, to me, that run deeper that aren't always available. Transparency is a big one, and we experienced this a lot with Light CMS. There was very little communication from the development team. You never knew what was going on. If sites ended up being down, you weren't sure. There was no status kind of updates, and so that's the kind of thing. When my sites are down, I want to be the first person to know, and so that's a really important kind of feature to me, so to speak, is that you're building your business on this platform. You need to know what's going on behind the scenes and where things stand all the time. Flexibility. This kind of goes a couple of ways. Of course, we mean design flexibility when we get into the editor that I'll show you in just a moment. But this is more responding to industry trends. We had issues with some platforms not supporting SSL in the past and things like that. Support that's not capable of helping you in unique situations. And so I see it as something that your provider needs to be able to adapt and move forward, or provide you some avenue for moving forward yourself if they're not willing to for some reason. Dedication to resellers is a really important point to me as well. I see a lot of platforms where this is kind of an afterthought, where we're direct consumer marketing. We are putting all our eggs in that basket, and then we suddenly realize that we can make an extra dollar here or there selling to resellers. And so now all the tools are geared towards consumers, but they're kind of being shoehorned into this framework for resellers to use. So not only is that not ideal, but then you may have a customer who has tried out that platform as a consumer before they happen to hit you as a reseller, and you go to launch their site, and now they're noticing kind of the same interface, and then there's these questions coming up like, why am I paying you X number of dollars when I'm only paying $8 a month? And and sometimes the feature set isn't even have parity with what is moved along on the consumer side and is more advanced for that cheaper price. So it's not about lying to your clients. I don't think in that case, but we want to be able to help you make an honest dollar for the skills and support that you bring to the table without you having to be questioned on price all the time. And finally, and this is a big one, obviously considering the topic of the talk, but vendor lock-in is something that I haven't seen any hosted platform successfully navigate. The closest thing we've seen is being able to export static HTML and CSS. But if you're not willing to do that and put it up on a host somewhere, then you're tied to hosting, to the vendor's hosting. You're tied to their CDN. You have to use their security certificates a lot of times. Of course, their interface and platform features and functionality are all kind of locked in. And as soon as you have a site that needs more than what they offer, it's time to start talking redesign most times, or rebuild at least on another platform, and moving off into WordPress or Joomla or Drupal or Craft CMS, whatever it is. to give them more of a custom setup. You know, and it might not just be the features and functionality, of course, as with Business Catalyst, could be when a platform shuts down. That's not a problem that's unique to Business Catalyst, but it's obviously the one that we're all here talking about lately. And so to me, being able to take your site with you when and where you want is paramount, and is not something that I've seen anybody else doing in a way that really makes sense to me. So let's see here. I'm going to hop out here and show you any questions about any of that so far as I switch gears here. Okay. I'm going to show you just a few example sites that we've built on SiteWild or some of our resellers have built, just so you can get a feel of kind of from a design standpoint what's possible. Here we have an energy website, just a basic static informational website. We have CanJam. They are a headphone kind of audio conference exhibitor. They do conferences across the world. Oop, Zoom controls got in the way there. I'll hop over. Just kind of got reliable energy policy. This is a political type website, but they've got a little bit more of a dashboard layout here at the very beginning. And you can see we've got some animation and stuff that can be configured. And then this is a site for a book that the client is selling. So fairly standard stuff that you've come to expect from a lot of the website platforms, from a lot of the website builders. Nothing groundbreaking, but it's there nonetheless. I'm going to hop over now quick to the administrative interface here and show you. Now, as I mentioned, and if you've checked out the site at all, we are running behind the scenes. Everything is powered by WordPress. And the reason for this is coming back to that vendor lock-in. You know, we looked at creating our own solution completely from scratch, and it just didn't make sense whenever there's already this ecosystem of tools around WordPress. So what we've done is tried to make it so that you can use it to quickly build out sites like you would expect with any other website builder or website platform, with that one key difference being when you are ready to move on, if you need to, you grab your site and go. I'm just going to hop in here. We're actually in edit mode right now on this particular site. And again, this is just another kind of static informational site. This is delete that out of there so I can show you that in a second. And as you would expect with most of the website builder tools out there today, we have sections, rows, modules, everything kind of available to you to be able to start crafting a custom page from the get-go. So we do have some templates built in to kind of help you get a jump start whenever you go to launch a new site. But every page you build is completely 100% custom if and when you need it to be. Everything is point and click, as you would expect. We can add any of the modules to the page, filter down to image gallery or an image, for example, and go through our image library of stuff that we've uploaded. And boom, we've got new content on the page. One thing that is fairly unique, I think a couple of page builders are doing this, but one thing that's really great is the ability to control things at a really granular level on mobile devices. So let's go into this text here. And I'm just docking my editor over here on the left-hand side. That's kind of like where I like to keep it at. So if we go in, we can start playing with some of the settings on the text. And I'm going to make this really ugly just so we can see the differences here. So we've got obviously visual control over those items. But now we've got mobile icons here on the side that we can click into. And now on tablet, we can start adjusting these independently of the desktop. If I flip back to desktop, it'll go back the way it was. We do the letter spacing too here. So there's tablet, and now on smartphone, let's make it really tall again. So from one device to the next, you can adjust different settings. And again, this isn't going for being pretty, but you can get a very different layout as you go from device to device. And you can control all that point and click without having to kind of do any custom code or jump out into another interface. It's all right here. It's all very visual. And this applies to things like cut margin and padding and those types of options as well. We can start setting spacing on here, but then define different spacing at different sizes. Now, I'm making lots of ugly changes to this. So I'm going to go ahead and let those save, and that looks absolutely terrible. But good news is, if I goof something up like this, I can come into the history and step back through the page all the way back to where we started, even back to that call to action that I had left on there. Go ahead and let that disappear again. So there's not really, from when you load the page up to when you, before any point before you save and leave the page, you can back up to any previous version or iteration of the page. One thing I like to do a lot when we are working on, instead of relying on that history, is I like to duplicate items, which can be useful for when you're building out content, but it can also be very useful for exploring different layout options and different things that you want to do. Because you can essentially just duplicate an entire section here and now work with it how you want. And then when you decide that, yes, that's kind of the layout I want, you can go ahead and just leave it and delete the old one. Sorry, Mike. Can you guys hear me okay? My computer froze up.
No, I think it's okay. Yeah, Denny, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I don't want to get too down in the weeds on the builder interface too far, because that can be all seen in a demo. You can play with lots of those things, but I do want to show you a couple of enhancements that make it really easy to build out sites that are a little bit more dynamic than just custom building every single thing on the page. One is this section that I had accidentally left in here earlier, was a global call to action is what we call it here. But so say we have an element that we want to use across the entire site. We want the design to stay the same, and all the content as we go across the site. So we'll go ahead and put our content in here. So button URL. All right, so we have this on the page, and this is something we're going to stick elsewhere across the site. So call this book call to action. I'm going to save this to the library. And this library is reusable across the entire site. So now, let's save this page real quick. And then we're going to go over to another page on the site. And now we have in our library here, there's the one that I saved earlier. And there's, oops, in the wrong section. We add a new row here. There we go. And there's our book call to action. And now when we update this, it's going to update across all the instances of this module across the entire site. Design, content, everything. Now, if you do have an instance where you don't want a particular piece of that to update across the site, we can do what's called selective sync. We can come in here and say, okay, we want to use the same content, but maybe on a different page. We want the design to be a little bit different. Maybe it's going to have different background color. So we can take off, uncheck that background color from being synced. And now whenever we change the background color, it'll be unique to this instance, but our content will all stay the same, and all the other settings, and we could leave certain design settings checked, such as the font, the button style, things like that, but then have other design settings or content settings synced, unsynced, so that they were unique per page. Now, one thing you've seen here, I'll go ahead and leave. On the home page was that I had a particular section here locked. And this comes into play whenever we're working with clients, because that's a big thing. We let these clients go on these sites. When we're looking at settings, we've got access not just to the content settings, we've got access to that whole bevy of design settings, and we can even go in and get really, really crazy with some custom CSS as well. And so we usually are going to want clients to be able to access those two particular pieces of content, of settings, the design and the advanced settings. And so let me show you what that looks like on the client side. I'm a client here now, logged in a different browser, and I can still edit settings down here that haven't been modified or locked out. But this top section here that I had locked is now not manageable at all by the client. We've locked it completely. So that's useful whenever you have really complicated sections or something where you kind of want to say, we're not going to let the client touch this at all. We don't want them to goof it up. Now, beyond that, clients also are restricted from having access to the design and advanced settings that I mentioned a moment ago. You can certainly turn those things on. The permissions are customizable, so that you can tweak that however you see fit for each individual client. But by default, that's kind of the experience that they'll have is they'll be able to edit content. And the background is another thing they can modify. I know it's kind of a design setting, but it's also sometimes related to the content to a certain degree. So it's here in the content tab. But beyond that, they are restricted to exactly what you want them to be able to have access to. So that's a little bit about the front-end editor. Again, there's tons and tons that we could spend hours probably going through the editor here, but I think that you'll see that that's fairly standard to a lot of WordPress page builders, or definitely to a lot of the other hosted platforms that are out there. So I don't want to waste too much of your time there. Now the design, I will show you, we have integration with the theme customizer to be able to kind of customize the more global elements of the page. So the header, the footer, some of the typography and settings like that. And everything, again, is point and click. If you've used WordPress, if you've used the theme customizer at all, you're going to have a similar experience here, but it's going to be unique to this setup. But the great part is if you do get to the point where you say we need to export a site, we need to move it off of the platform, we need to take this site elsewhere for some reason, or we're not satisfied for some reason with SiteWild altogether and we need to move all of our sites off, this all comes along. Everything that I'm showing you, everything that you see is going to come along with you if and when you decide to take your sites off the platform. Now, the only thing, there would be small differences in the administrative process. This toolbar that stays with us across the entire site, for example, wouldn't be there because you're going to be building presumably more advanced functionality. So you'd go back to the kind of regular WordPress interface and lose a little bit of that there, but all of the features and all of the everything you've built in the site up until then is going to come along with you. In addition to the design customizer, the theme customizer, there's also a module customizer, and that lets you set default intelligent defaults on all of the various content modules that we see whenever we go to add a module to the page. So you get some level of consistency across the site, but then you can tweak it further from there. When you go to, let's say, manage pages, let's get out of that there. You can now see if you've done any work with WordPress, you'll start to see this is a little bit more of a standard WordPress interface. We're still honestly cleaning up some of it. We've already done a lot to kind of take some of the WordPress out of WordPress, so to speak. You know, in an effort to clean things up and make it more usable for clients. And but you know, that looks familiar, I'm sure, to a lot of you if you've toyed with it at all. But you get, sorry, my computer froze up here again. You do get you know, a little bit different interface whenever you go into the settings. We've streamlined this as for modifying SEO and things of that nature. And all of the content editing takes place then on the front end instead of being kind of tied to this back end interface where you don't see really the content that you're working with. So that's what it looks a little bit like managing a single site. Now we're talking about managing multiple sites here. So when you are logged into any site on the platform, you can come up here to switch site. This will take you out to a list of all of your sites, and you can just hop on over to another one. And you're automatically logged in across all your sites, and there you are, ready to go, ready to click edit here and get back into working on some content for the next client. I don't have the chat in front of me. Dave, are there any questions thus far on the?
No, I don't see any in the. I don't see any in the chat right now. So carry on, and
all right.
Just remind the audience, if you do have questions, pop them in the chat there, and then you'll get to them as appropriate.
Awesome, awesome. One thing I didn't mention as I was going through some of the interface here is that everything's fully integrated with Google Fonts. So there's quite a level of control there as far as setting font faces and things like that. That's one a lot of our designers are really always looking to and really excited about, that they can choose from that selection or upload any of their own custom web fonts if they have a license for them. You can get pretty granular with that too if you even want to, for example, change a font in the middle of a sentence. You can come in and really kind of tweak what things are going to look like, you know, far beyond what you would have with just a standard WordPress editing interface. So everything's completely white label. So clients are going to see that they'll never see anything about SiteWild, and none of the email notifications or anything like that. All of the URLs are branded without SiteWild. Even down to the CDN URLs and things like that. Now there is CDN built in, so you get free access to CDN. We take care of SSL for you. You can install custom SSL certificates if you'd like as well. So if you have some kind of an extended validation certificate that you know that you need to install from the organization or from the client, those can be added. Of course, we take care of all of the backups and security and those less flashy features as well. Lost my spot there.
So Mary asked, and I was going there too, like things like secure zones, something similar to web apps from a BC perspective. What does that look like in here?
Yes.
And then email marketing.
Great. Okay. So email marketing, email addresses, CRM, those types of things are not built in, and probably never will be, if I'm being honest. And I know that's not ideal for a lot of the folks here, but we're really trying to focus on creating an experience on the web development side, building a website. And those things, to me, at this point, are just a little bit of a distraction for kind of putting together a solid product and a solid experience. So those things are not there. The custom secure zones and kind of custom apps. Secure zones are not built in yet. It is something that we've looked at, being able to add membership areas that you can certainly add users to the site and restrict them based on role. So you can just create them as a subscriber. And these are standard WordPress terminology as well. We kind of kept things that way intentionally so that if you do transition the site out, you don't really lose anything in translation. Everything kind of stays as you would expect it, and makes sense then in the new exported site as well. So you could manually set that up and restrict some things by role, but it's not something where it's self-service really for a user to sign up and kind of do any of that with secure zones. With custom apps, that's something that is coming, but I'm not sure if the form is going to take quite yet. The main hang up is how do we implement that with the visual editor, and what happens when we add an app or add custom fields and things like that. How do we display them by default? We're controlling everything with the visual editor here versus everything being based in code. So we're trying to figure out a way for that to make sense, kind of in the workflow of the product itself. Custom post types, of course, are built into WordPress. If you're not familiar with them, they do give us a way to kind of add custom data and extend it with our own sets of custom fields. So we already have sort of the technical infrastructure for that in place. It's more of a how do we handle it, inside of the editor and in a way that makes sense to both the resellers and partners and to the end client. So that is something that's on the radar, but it's not implemented yet either. But it's something that will be coming sometime probably in the next 6 months is kind of the time frame we're looking at on that. But there again, yeah, the email marketing and kind of all the add-ons that Business Catalyst provides, those are things that we're not currently looking at implementing.
The other one was forms with payment.
Yes, so forms with payment are on the way. We have that. I don't have it in the demo, unfortunately, but we do have that prepared in our staging environment. We're looking at launching that sometime in the next 2 weeks. We're just going through some additional testing. We do have web forms built in right now. They just don't take payment. So I can show you what those look like. Yeah, that's kind of the restriction there. You can collect info, have it emailed off, but it's more or less limited to collecting information into the system. But we can add, again, it's pretty standard stuff. I won't go through all the details of it, but you can add any variety of options here, field types, and then have that emailed off to you or to the client or both once the form is submitted. You can have those display a thank you message then, or redirect to a landing page, like if you're trying to log things with with analytics or AdWords or those types of things and kind of keep track of where that stuff's coming in. You can send off to a separate landing page that will pixel those people and log the conversion. So
cool. Bruce asks about integration options, for instance, into Zapier.
Yeah, Zapier is not fully integrated yet. There's kind of a lot of little things. No, I shouldn't say little. That's a big thing that's on the radar, but it's not. There's not native integration with it just yet. It depends on what you're looking to do with Zapier. If it was something, I don't know if that was piggybacking off of the web form question or not, but they, of course, have some hooks for dealing with email. If it was something based on that, you know, a lead coming in or something like that, you could still run that through Zapier, through their email parser. And I didn't show you this, but you know, one question a lot of people have is custom code. Of course, everything we're dealing with here is a visual editing experience. You can add a code module to the page and input your own custom code if there's something you really, you know, some kind of a widget or something that just couldn't be done with the visual editing interface. Now, if the code you're looking to integrate is more of the analytics, AdWords, Facebook pixels variety, that would be under the design and then custom code option here. And we can add CSS, JavaScript, or HTML. And when we do add it, we actually get an editor here where we can kind of work on it if we need to. This can apply to the front end of the site or the back end if there's something you want to tweak in the administrative interface for your clients, for example. You want to hide a menu item that we don't hide for default for some reason, or change colors or something of that nature. You can even modify have this show up on the administrative side of things as well. But you know, here your code would go. You choose whether you want to drop it in the header or the footer, and then you can even filter it down to what page it needs to land on. So in a lot of cases that'll be the entire site, but if this is something like a conversion pixel or something that you just want on a particular page, you can kind of filter that out and add that logic there.
Okay, well, that's it for questions. If you want to carry on, or I don't know. Oh, Mary asked about Google Analytics. I'm assuming using that technique you just showed us, that's how you drop that code in, right?
Yeah, you know, I know a lot of platforms and a lot of tools have a special spot where you would stick an analytics code or something like that. But it seems to me as things evolve, it's going to be a game of constantly keeping up with, you know, the best version of the code and things of that nature. And so instead of having a specific, you know, enter your Google Analytics profile ID or something like that, we would just have you drop the entire integration code into that custom code option. We do have, this is kind of the last thing I was gonna go over with some of the settings that you have available to you. Of course, we've got most of the standard WordPress type settings, but we do add in, since we provide the caching for you, you do have some control over that on an individual site basis. You generally don't need to touch this, but we'll sometimes see a case where the CSS file, for example, may not get cleared for some reason. Something happens like that, you can come in here and you can clear the cache. You can also clear it when you're on a particular individual page. You can come up here to the tools option and clear the cache either for the entire site or for this page only. Again, it's usually not an issue, but occasionally if you upload maybe an image that's got the exact same file name, you're overwriting an existing image and it's not clearing out of the CDN for some reason or something like that, you can come up here and clear it out. Performance optimization is another thing that we have built in. Works pretty seamlessly with the stock setup, you know, stock installation, but if you were to add some kind of custom JavaScript or something that didn't play nicely, maybe a third-party library, jQuery library or something like that, you could come in here and turn some of those optimizations off if it wasn't working well for you. And then as well, if you decide that you want your own CDN, have control over any of the assets there yourself versus the one that we provide for you, then you could certainly add in your own CDN URL here and have everything run through your account. And that would be a pull CDN. We don't support push CDNs.
So are you doing anything specific for responsive images, like with source set, or, you know, taking advantage of the thumbnail, auto thumbnail functionality of WordPress to serve the right-sized image given the device? Yeah,
so I mean the thumbnails will come in automatically. I mean, we resize those. We resize if you upload an image, you know, an original source image from a high resolution camera, it's going to go ahead and resize that down so that it's not any bigger. I think we maxed out at 2560 pixels. It goes ahead and takes care of that for you. It keeps the original asset, but it resizes it down just so when we're serving this to web visitors, it's not anything crazy. And then it goes ahead and generates the variations of that, the thumbnails that you mentioned, so that we have all those assets available for the various places they're displaying them. The source set stuff is not, there's no support for that right now.
Okay. So how does it know to put a smaller image on a phone, say, versus a desktop?
Oh, so we don't, maybe I misunderstood what you're saying then. So there's not dynamic support for replacing the images based on the screen size.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's purely selfish. I'm just looking at that.
No, yeah.
That functionality myself here. So
yeah, well, and I know that there's, I know you were using WordPress. I know there's some other folks that they're using it too. So that's why I said I welcome any questions, even if it's for your own, even if it's for your own selfish purposes. That's totally fine with me. So we're looking. That was the questions we had for now. I just wanted to touch on some things that we are getting at in the future. We're looking to bring in images from probably Unsplash is what we're going to integrate with, but something to give you a really quick way, when you're building out a site and you need a new background image, to hop in here. Not only could you upload your own images, then we would have another tab where you can choose from a third-party provider like that provides free open source images or available for public use. Client billing is a big thing that we're working on right now. It's coming out end of September, likely. That's what we've got on the roadmap for. And so this is going to enable you to bill the site service straight through to your client on a monthly basis without having to set up your own recurring billing outside of the platform. We talked about the forms with payment integration. That's coming, and there's a number of other features that come along with the web form, with those more advanced forms at the time, in addition to the payment integration. But that should be here just a couple of weeks. We're looking at other reseller specific features. So some other things we've got in development right now in various stages. Broken link checking, site duplication. Now we can duplicate sites for you on the back end on our side right now, but we're bringing that to the front end so that you can control that. So that's going to enable you to set up, you could set up a staging site, for example, that has everything you need configured the way you want it, and then use that kind of as a template of your own, in addition to the templates that we have built in to be able to kind of build out brand new sites from. Of course, we discussed, and it's a little beyond the scope of the demo here, but we can export out to standalone WordPress. That's starting at 250. So and that, I think, is that. Let me pull these resources up here.
So that time my computer froze up and I had to reboot.
I saw your friendly face disappear. So here's relevant URLs you need to know. We are fixing to launch a larger site with some additional resources here in the next week or so. But until then, you can, this is kind of invite only right now. So you can create an account if you'd like to take the system for a spin and kind of play around and see what you think at sitewild.com/create account. You could shoot me an email anytime, denny@sitewild.com. As I mentioned a couple times here, I'm happy to chat about our system. I'm happy to chat about WordPress, about concerns you may have coming from Business Catalyst or any other system over to WordPress or over to SiteWild. And if you'd like to chat in person about any of those things, you can hit up the Calendly link there and schedule a short chat. We'll go through and talk in person.
Cool. If you wouldn't mind, Denny, when my computer reboots, we lose the recording.
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly what you covered, but I think the pricing is probably relevant. If you wouldn't mind just showing that again.
Oh, sure. Let me pop
Just
that
so
up
people
here.
are watching the recording, they get a chance to see that too.
Yeah. So here's recording, and I don't know what part you cut out at. I'm sorry, here's pricing. I'm not sure where you left at, but we start out at $19 a month, and then we have discounts built in as you build more and more sites. The price gets lower and lower per site. And then at the 25 sites level, we start adding in custom development hours that you can pick and choose to use across your sites however you please. So when you run into those little bugs or little issues that you're just not familiar with fixing or don't want to fix or mess with, then we can take care of those for you. And again, since we're geared more towards designers and marketers, we see that being pretty useful for a lot of those folks. Just to have that little bit of extra level of support without having to get nickel and dimed every time they need a little bit of a change.
Okay, and then if I remember correctly, you're working on where I could so say rebill to my customer at whatever rate I choose to. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So this you would get charged if you're on the 3-site plan. You'd get charged the $13.61. If you paid yearly, you'd get charged that per site, and then you can mark it up to whatever you'd like to. So if there's any additional services, SEO or anything like that you want to add on and kind of have it all come across on the same bill, you can take care of that. It's going to run through Stripe, so there's a fairly large amount of compatibility there. We may look at implementing other payment vendors if the need, kind of on a case-by-case basis if we see people requesting it. But right now we're gonna launch with Stripe out of the gate, and then that'll take care of. And then you can have the choice of, if the client's card something's wrong, the billing doesn't go through, do you want to disable the site? Do you want to leave it active for a certain time period? Kind of how you want to handle that client relationship at that point is going to be on you. You would continue to be billed until you decide to shut the site down or downgrade to a lower plan or something like that. But we can definitely take care of the client piece once this launches here in the next months.
And any end customer support or your support would come to me and my customer would also come to me, right?
Do we take care of support for your customers? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Is that an option or is it available? Yeah.
If somebody's in that situation right now, shoot me an email and we can discuss. That is something that we're looking to provide. We're just not sure where it slots in, where we would start providing that and what level, or if we would do it all the way through. So right now we're kind of addressing it on a case-by-case basis, but and there's not, up until this point, we don't have any charge for that for the few handful of clients that we are handling that for. So something you're looking to set up, just shoot me an email. We can discuss how that works for you. But then we would generally either have, a lot of times we'll just set up a white label email address with the client. So something, web support at yourdomain.com. And then you could have requests come through there and you get copied on everything, but then we can take care of the nitty gritty of answering the details of that support request.
Cool. If your question did not get answered, if you could put it back in chat, because I did lose my chat when I rebooted, but I don't believe there's any more questions there. We're down to the last few minutes here. So if there's no more questions, there's one. So maybe you want to read that, Denny, in the chat from Carrie?
I hadn't seen that, Carrie, but just looked at that yesterday and everything was fine on it. I'll double check. Thank you for pointing that out. I'm aware the links are there, but I wasn't aware that they weren't working, so appreciate that.
Very good. That's a lot of information, Denny. It's a nice overlay, if you will, on top of an existing, stable and large infrastructure. And you've you made efforts there to address the stability and the security and all the rest of that stuff. So
Yeah.
Looks like it could be an appropriate platform for a given group of people, like you say, maybe leaning more towards designers and developers, but
For sure.
there's certainly lots of designers in the Business Catalyst audience. So.
Yeah, and I mean that's really what we're trying to bring to the table is make WordPress accessible to, and on the power that it brings, make that accessible to people that aren't necessarily comfortable with. They're probably perfectly technically capable of setting up something on WP Engine or Flywheel or something like that, but when you don't have the expertise, sometimes you're just not comfortable managing that, and so I want to kind of be able to provide that technical partnership piece of the puzzle and let you just worry about building client sites.
All right. Well, the last couple of minutes, if anybody's got any questions, you can grab the mic or you can put it in chat, and we'll just finish out this sand pile. So Carrie's added, can you use something like WooCom with this for a store?
Yes. So e-commerce is not available right now. We have a few clients in beta using this right now, kind of testing it out and playing with it on some low traffic sites. But that's as long as everything goes well there over the next couple of weeks, that should be launched as well. So e-commerce integration, and again at same pricing. There's no change once you add on the store. Everything's kind of included at that one price.
All right. In the words of the famous Ferris Bueller, anyone, Bueller, and you'll appreciate that being as you're close to Chicago there.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Louise. Appreciate that.
Then again, if you have any more questions, either those that are live here or those watching the recording, Denny's kindly offered his email address. You can contact him directly and go from there.
Dave, does this record on my end, do you know, or is it only on yours?
If it does record on yours, you'll see a recording in the top left-hand side. Do you see that?
I do. Yeah, well, I see a recording icon in my toolbar up there.
It'll actually say recording if it's a recording.
Okay, so it must not be then. Okay.
Yeah, so I wind up with two files and I stitch them together with that small little overlap, and I think I'm running out of cache space. I gotta my boot drive is a little light, and maybe I don't know. That's the second time that happened.
Oh.
It happened last week as well, and I thought it was an anomaly, but it was about the same time in the presentation, so I'm thinking maybe there's a cache issue.
Time for an upgrade.
I keep pressing for that. Yeah. All right. Well, that's it. I'm going to call it. I appreciate your time, Denny, and thanks for everybody for showing up, and we'll talk later.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you guys having me.